How would you feel if you were given a blank piece of paper, a blue sky opportunity to create a financial brand from scratch? Well, this was the exact opportunity that Rob Hoyle and his team had when they created Hustle. This is Rob's story.
You're listening to the Banking on Digital Growth podcast.
Welcome back to the Banking on Digital Growth podcast. I'm James Robert Lay, founder and CEO of the Digital Growth Institute, where we're on a mission to help financial brands stop losing loans and deposits in 30 days because of unseen gaps in their marketing and sales systems. And the way that we do this is by guiding financial brands through the Banking on Digital Growth program, which is comprised of 3 simple steps. Step number 1, secret shop your website. Step number 2, get your digital growth blueprint. And step number 3, build your digital growth engine. However, before we guide any financial brands through this process, we start everyone off with a website benchmark review. And you can schedule your website benchmark review right now by texting benchmark to 415-579-3002. Joining me for today's Digital Growth Conversation, Digital Growth Journeys series is Rob Hoyle, Chief Information Officer at Vantage West Credit Union. And today we're going to unpack Rob's journey to launch HUSTL, a new banking experience that is built specifically for freelancers. Welcome to the show, Rob. It is great to share time with you today.
Thank you, sir. I'm super glad to be here.
Well, I am glad that you are here. And before we get into talking really a true banking on change story in the making, what is good for you right now, personally or professionally, to get started? Your pick.
Let's see. Everything's good for me right now. We're in the process of selling our house and doing a little upgrade. Family's good. I've got 2 little kids that are both have birthdays coming up. They're killing it. They're growing and they're super smart and super fun. Everything's good.
How old are they?
By mid-July, they'll be 4 and 8. So 3 and 7 right now.
3 and 7, 4 and 8. Okay, so your oldest is right at the very end of our youngest. So we have 14, 12, 10, and 8. So
oh wow,
yeah. You
2's enough for me.
Well, you've got a lot of fun coming up. I'll just tell you that, particularly with those ages and where you're headed. And congratulations on selling the house and upgrading, because I mean, you think of this idea of upgrade, it doesn't matter if we're talking about a house, personal growth, professional growth, the growth that you've been doing as a credit union, launching new initiatives into niche markets with Hustle. I'm curious, if you think back on just your own journey of growth, because you've done a lot of cool things, what has been the biggest, most fascinating lesson outside of Hustle? Some of the cool work that you've done over the years that people might not just be aware of?
So I've done a lot of really cool things in my career. I've had an opportunity to work in medical research at the university level, municipal government, radiology, and then some private equity-based facilities management. We were talking earlier, I just saw a picture on my time hop of when we did an MRI on a Komodo dragon back when I was working at Mississippi State University. I've built large-scale visualization walls for the Office of Naval Research. We've done some work in augmented reality back in 2000s, well before it was mainstream. So a lot of, research tends to push the envelope, and I had a lot of fun in applying technology there. But I do think that bar none, the most fun I've had in my career has been Hustle, launching a digital brand.
Why is that?
Because we had all the tools in the toolkit. We are an established credit union. We are ready to go. We're successful by all measures, largest credit union in Southern Arizona. But we had to start from scratch at the same time, and we wanted to do it differently. We wanted to try something that was not really being done. So kind of working in parallel with all of this knowledge, but also trying to forget it all at the same time, was both challenging and educational and enlightening. It was just a lot of fun. Besides that, in technology, we generally work behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But as a part of launching this brand, I've had conversations around marketing, patent law, technology, or trademark law, things, just really interesting things that you would never think of when you're starting from a blank sheet of paper.
let's talk about that. Starting from a blank sheet of paper, know and I hear this from many financial brand leaders, particularly community leaders, whether a community bank or a credit union. Starting with a blank sheet of paper can be a very scary and intimidating place to start, because it's like you have a blue sky, but then it's like, well, where do you begin? And I think what you just shared was very important. Maybe even connect and roll back to that. It's like we have all this knowledge, but then we have to forget what we know too. How do you navigate that perspective there?
That's a great question. For me, it's not intimidating. Blue sky thinking is kind of in my wheelhouse. If you look at my working geniuses or things like that,
Hmm.
it's where I like to be.
Yeah.
I like to consider the possible. So, I think what we do or what we did was start looking at what we would do if we didn't have all the knowledge. How would you do this right based on what we know is right today? We're not encumbered, not just by the knowledge, but by all of the history and the practices and the procedures. And so we got to start from zero, which is an opportunity, not really a threat, if you will. I don't. That's the wrong word, but
Hmm.
it was a really unique opportunity because we can start with all of the modern technology. We don't have to worry about taking care of anybody existing because there are no people existing. So we just started from how should we do this if we're starting right now?
Yeah.
What should it look like?
Well, that idea of starting with a blank piece of paper and creating and even co-creating, because this was an internal collaboration, you also had external collaborators too. You picked a niche, and I'm curious, how did you go about determining where to where to plant the flag? Because that can be a very scary exercise for many.
Yeah.
Once again, it's like, we're going to plant this flag here. What did that process look like?
So we kind of looked. Again, we're a very successful credit union. We serve our membership very well, but we only serve 180,000 people in Southern Arizona, roughly, and there are millions.
Hmm.
So the exercise is, who are the people that are not resonating with our message? What's out there that makes sense? Of course, we need a segment of the market that is profitable,
Yep.
that is willing to switch was a big part of it. We need to find the people who are willing to come out on a limb with us in this digital only brand.
Hmm.
Um, and then we need to find a group of people that are not really having their needs met.
Mm.
So we looked at a few different options, and when the idea of highly skilled freelancers came around, it was a light bulb moment. These people are very technologically familiar. They're already, heavy in their phones in the app environment. They're willing to use that. They'll trust the technology.
Yeah.
They are not business customers or members. They're not retail. They're kind of in the middle. There's this world they live in that it's not quite uh, acknowledged. Some might call them, businesses hiding in retail. But they're not a business really. They're in the gig economy. They're doing things on the side, or maybe as they're just purely entrepreneurial, but they don't have employees. They don't have a business set up. So we really felt strongly that that was a good opportunity. And then when we looked at our existing field of membership, it is heavy in this group of people. The Phoenix and Tucson metro areas have lots and lots of freelancers.
Sure.
So that's how we got there.
So you had some affinity already at the local market level. Does the potential for growth with Hustle go beyond the local market? Does it expand into a larger geographic? And the geographic is then not a major factor because you're focused on a particular market segment, the niche, once again, with the freelancer market here. Is there a potential for even growth beyond the physical world?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there are, just because our existing field of membership in over indexes or has a high percentage of these people,
Hmm.
that's great. But there's a high percentage of these people across the country,
Yeah.
in different areas. And I do think that our total addressable market scales with the geography, and we certainly will look to take advantage of that and go beyond just the bounds of our geography.
When you look at the idea of the niche in the freelancers and the way that you've positioned this, built for the freelancers, but you scratched out the 8 to 5ers. Um, what were some of the common pains or the problems that you heard? And I really appreciate this because your official role, your title is Chief Information Officer. Like you said, you tend to might think someone like you works behind the scene, but we were far from behind the scenes. You were right in front, collaborating with others internally.
Yep.
When you think about the pains of a freelancer when it comes to financial and money management, what were some of the common patterns that you were hearing from them?
So I have personal experience here because I did some technology consulting.
Okay.
And in full disclosure, as we were fleshing this out, we started with tech entrepreneurs. That was our initial idea, was what if it was just the tech market?
Huh.
These people doing networks or cybersecurity or what have you. We expanded it for the obvious reasons around the size of the market. But when I was doing it personally and I was consulting on the side, it's a hassle.
Yeah.
You're using a combination of tools with Excel, your email, Microsoft Word. Invoicing is a problem. Cash flow management, tracking, project things. They're all a problem, and they're solved today by a lot of the market by an amalgamation of things. They might have 3 apps or 4 apps or what have you, or they might be doing it in their head and missing some things. So where we're trying to bring is a one-stop shop where all of their problems can be addressed and their life can be easy. The value prop here is we'll take care of this so you can go build your business.
Yeah. Well, listening, which is so key when you're creating from scratch, leads to collaboration and co-creation. And just a couple of points that I want to surface based upon what you shared with me is the way that this is positioned. It's, you can keep your gig and personal money separate once and for all. You have the ability to set up custom project folders to track spending by gig, client, equipment, expenses, supplies, and more.
Right.
You had experience here, but then and I liked how there was a pivot because you had a hypothesis. Well, we're going to do this for the tech space. But then we were like, well, there's a common pattern that then transcends that to create even more value here. What's been and just looking back, because you launched this, what was it, in early 2024?
Yes.
So
March.
so March, April, May, June. So we're 4 months in. What have been the big, I want to look at this from 2 different lenses. Let's look at this from pre-launch. Building from scratch, starting with a blank sheet of paper, go back to launch day. What were the big lessons that you learned from the time that we said, we're going to commit to do something like this to the time of launch? What were the biggest lessons that y'all learned along that journey to launch?
The biggest lesson pre-launch, I'd say there were 2. One is sort of an obvious lesson, but we learn it every time. It's never as easy. Something will go wrong. In our instance, the Google store was delaying our launch for a reason still unknown to us.
Yeah.
The big lesson was this is much harder and much more work and much more effortful than it seems on the surface. The primary issue was that of getting out of our own way, treating it differently, change management, and kind of letting go of all the control. But we put a lot of work and a lot of effort into that, more so than I expected.
Did y'all have, and this is more of a tactical, but I see many opportunities for other financial brands to explore these new growth opportunities. You and I were talking about speaking at a conference, and this conference I spoke at previously, I think it was even last year, it was a prediction of the future, particularly around niche. And I remember vividly sharing with that, even for credit unions, the future of credit unions could be you had a corporate brand, but then that corporate brand has a portfolio of niche brands that sits underneath the corporate brand. And I could have sworn that people were looking at me like I had a head full of eyeballs or tentacles or just something like out of the movie Monsters Inc. They thought that I was crazy. And this is a group of, board of directors and senior leaders.
Yeah.
Why is there maybe a aversion to this type of thinking at a macro market level within the vertical?
There's some discomfort, which is I couldn't say why, but what I would say is that when you're talking about a large corporate brand with many niches underneath it, isn't that really a multi-seg credit union?
Exactly.
I
It's
mean,
almost,
isn't that I would love to be talking to you in 5 years and we have 5 digital brands. I
yeah,
would love it.
yes, because the messaging, it really comes down to three things. It comes positioning, product, and then production and promotion of, we'll just call it content to create awareness.
Yeah. Yep.
And the more tailored, the more focused that you can get, the higher propensity that there is to create an emotional connection that makes a positive impact of the belief system of an individual. Says, oh, they get me. They know me.
Yep.
They can help me and I can trust them. And then that would drive my behavior to explore, open, experiment. And then, man, I feel good. And on top of that, you know what? I got friends. They're just like me. So I'm going to go tell those friends who are going to tell their friends. And it has this swell, this groundswell. Coming back to pre-launch, who, we'll call it the cohort, who helped to bring this to bear? Because once again, you're looking at this from the lens of technology, but you also mentioned marketing. What did that look like, practically speaking, from an internal collaboration, but maybe even an external collaboration too?
So our AVP of digital banking is hugely responsible for this effort. Digital banking does roll up to me in our organization, and she took the helm and she coined the name. That was her idea, and fought tooth and nail for it
I love
because
it.
we had some conversations around a name. We'll say, obviously, our leadership team and buy-in, our board was fully bought in, and understanding the risks that we're taking and the reasons we're taking them. So they were, were key. Our legal team, our compliance team, our marketing team, all involved. We have an external partner in Nimbus, who came to the table and ideated with us and got us where we are, and deserves a ton of credit with that as well.
That's fantastic. And I'm so happy that you shared, because this is a multifaceted approach to where you have internal resources, you have the external collaboration with Nimbus. Now, flash forward, you launched in March, 4 months in, looking back on progress. What have been the big lessons that you've learned from launch day to today that it's like, we've made progress, but here's a key lesson that I can take and then apply to the next iteration of growth as we're continuing to learn and then optimize?
That's a spectacular question. I think the easy one, the easy lesson that we've learned, and what we're now working on, is that it's one thing to be a digital only financial institution and deliver digitally, but to the point you were making about, oh, you get us, you're part of this group, there's this affinity. We're going to put boots on the ground. We're gonna engage in events and things like that with this community. So we're going to have human beings touching other human beings in person,
Yes.
as a part of the effort here. Because if you just throw it out there like Field of Dreams, I don't know that they're going to come.
Yeah.
But you got to build the affinity.
Yes.
So we're not paving the way here, but we're fast following. We will be doing some efforts in person, sponsorship of events, what have you, around it, and that's the biggest lesson I think we've learned so far.
So I'm curious. My third book is already getting framed out, which will end this trilogy. I'm taking a George Lucas approach of, episode. I'm gonna do 4, 5, and 6, and I'll stop there, and maybe I'll come back and I'll do 1, 2, and 3, and then maybe 7, 8, and 9. And they
There you
might
go.
and the reason being is the third book. The title is Banking on Expertise, and I have a hypothesis that in the age of AI, particularly in a world of commoditizations, a world of commoditized products like financial services, experiences have the potential to even become commoditized. Well, what happens when experiences are commoditized? What are we left with? It's expertise. And it's having that affinity to a particular market that has a large enough TAM, total of addressable market, that we can create value for and even co-create value for, that the banking on expertise looks at unlocking, capturing, and amplifying the expertise of the brand to continuously create value for the TAM, regardless of if the TAM actually uses the product. And
Yep.
it's so good to hear that you're looking at adding a human element to this. In Banking on Digital Growth, I wrote DX plus HX equals growth, meaning a positive digital experience when combined with a positive human experience. That is the path towards growth. Although I realize with banking on change, I got that wrong because I forgot the employee experience. And so reframe this in parentheses, EX plus HX, meaning a positive human employee experience leads to a positive human experience. That can then be then multiplied. And in some cases, you can put that into the exponential factor, exponentially multiplied through a positive digital experience. When you look ahead to the future of HUSTL, what are you feeling most encouraged, excited, and energized about?
The possibilities. A quick anecdote, if I may.
Sure.
Our very first organic member with HUSTL ran into our Vantage West business development people at a function for small businesses in Tucson, and this particular member was so excited and had the debit card. We have a picture, and she found us through the Business Journal article, totally organic, no paid anything, no benefits, and she was excited about the possibilities of the collaborations and bringing, building a hustle family, if you will, or a real true affinity group. So I think that there's huge power in that potential, and it's exactly what you're talking about. It's that adding value to that market, whether or not they're participating in your brand, they're still in that market, and they're still somewhere where we can, and it doesn't have to be necessarily financial services value. It just has to be value. So I think that is, when I look to the future, I envision, that type of thing where we're bringing huge value to our membership through the affinity, more so than through the products.
Do you mind if we co-create? Because it'd be really cool to do something on this podcast that we can use as an anchor and look back on a year from now, 3 years from now, and say, you know what, this was an inflection point. Because that's why I love these conversations, because there have been times that we've solved a problem or found an opportunity, and then 6 months or a year or a couple of years later, they're like, you remember when we had that conversation? Yeah. Well, here's what we're doing. I'm like, that's awesome. So
Yeah.
this idea of affinity, it really gets me so excited, particularly the entrepreneurial world of, we'll call them small to mid-sized businesses or side hustles that could in fact become a small business one day. And there are 4 elements that make up the banking on expertise model or method. It all starts with content. And the content comes from co-creation with the marketplace, meaning let's get in, let's have some conversations. Essentially, it's the model that we're running here, except I'm trying to
Yeah.
take this model, operationalize it, and then start bringing this to others, because you get a value multiplier that way. So research, quarterly research, trends, recommendations from the content that now goes in what drives curriculum. So it's like, here are the challenges that we're seeing. Here's the curriculum, and curriculum can be delivered in a variety of manners, but it's just essentially taking the content and then packaging that up for the
Right.
particular affinity. But the third element, though, that I'm not seeing a lot of organizations consider right now, that I'm really helping to try to elevate the mind into the opportunity, is coaching. Because if we're looking to achieve some level of growth, it means that we're going to have to change something from what we're doing today. And I know through A, personal experience, and B, having coached and guided at this point over 650 financial brands, the human element, the human factor is so challenging to change and transform that whenever you integrate coaching into a brand experience, whether that coaching is delivered in 3 types of ways. You can do a community like coaching model. You could do a cohort coaching model, so not as big as community, smaller, or you could even do it more of a premium, a private one-on-one coach. That actually unlocks new potential fee revenue as well, because there's a multiplier. It's like, so we've got the product, we've got the coaching, we've got the content, we've got the curriculum. All of that then is built and centralized around community. And the community might be the affinity of who the ideal account holder or the ideal member is for Hustle. But then there's also the secondary and tertiary orbits for those that are creating value for the community. That it's really the core of collaboration. So I just thinking,
Yeah.
just wanted to transfer, get that out of my head into your head and see where that might come
So
from.
I think we're in a similar. You're much more eloquently and more detailed laid out than I am. But we're thinking is, for our brand and for our marketing and for our social, we intend to use our target market. We want freelancers. We the technologist in me is going to come out when I call it dog fooding. We're gonna use our own code. We're gonna eat our own dog food.
Yeah.
And where I see that evolving to is that then these people who are doing this for us, we can offer to the community. Hey, does your small business need marketing help? Here's our group. And so we can promote them and partner with them and co-branding. You know, they're the ones doing it here. If you like it, here's how you get them. So it's the same wavelength. It's not quite as well thought out as where you've gotten it, but I love that idea.
Yeah. And I like what you're taking though, because there's a multiplier effect that you have the Hustle brand for the freelancer market that you could then take back and integrate into the Vantage West brand and the small to mid-sized businesses in that don't necessarily fall into the Hustle ICP,
Right.
but there's value created on both sides. See, this is why I love doing this podcast, because I came in here learning, you're already teaching me something new. And then hopefully those that are listening and watching, they're able to think about their own unique situation. Where could this apply within my local community that we can create a multiplier effect? For those who are watching and listening and thinking about your journey of growth and change and transformation, what's one thing that you would recommend they do next on their own journey of growth that they can keep moving forward and making progress? Particularly, like, maybe even just give them a blank sheet of paper and say, here's a blue sky. The future is yours to create. What would you recommend?
Oh, that I think is go to the blue sky and think of what you would do if you were unencumbered. What would you do if failure was actually success? Because I think so often we get in our own way. We're afraid something's not going to work. And I can tell you unequivocally, without regard to what happens to Hustle, it's been a huge success. We have learned so much. So I think that's just it. Take that opportunity to take the blank sheet of paper and put a crazy idea out there. Put yourself out there.
What would you do if
That's where you got to
failure,
start.
and I like the way you frame that. What would you do if failure was success? See, there are 4 stages, there are 4 steps that lead to human transformation. And the step number 1 is just to simply see things differently. In the way that you frame that, what would you do if failure was success? You've really reframed what was traditionally been a very painful experience, i.e., failure, specifically in this vertical. What if failure is success? When you see different, you're going to think different. When you think different, you're not always going to do different. And I think that we miss the gap right there. To bridge the gap between thought and action comes down to one thing: it's feeling and it's emotion. You have to have the desire, the feeling, the motion, the motivation to then do different. And if we gloss over that, we tend to stay stuck in the status quo. Even if we are seeing things different, even if we are thinking differently, we can't forget the feeling and the emotive piece of this. And that's where this idea of failure, and I wrote about this in Banking on Change, and it's something that we've been teaching our kids, that in the lay household, we have winners and we have learners. We don't have losers. We don't have
Right.
failures, because we just got our standardized tests back, and our 2 oldest, you could say they're quote unquote excelling, but it's all a matter of perspective. I mean, because they were scoring the 99 92 percentile on all the tests. And then our third in line, so we got boy, girl. He's going to the 5th grade. He was scoring like the 50 percentile. We had some really good conversations. I had some really good conversations with him. My wife had some really good conversations with him because you could perceive, and he could perceive that he's struggling in school. Well, he just has a different type of brain. He perceives the world differently. He's neurodivergent for that matter. He comes by it honestly. The way that he can model Legos and build a scale replica of a Titanic ship out of cardboard, you're like, you have a high level of intelligence, particularly on the engineering side of things. So helping him to detach the pain of the perceived pain, what others would perceive as failure or falling short. No, let's lean more into those gifts that you have and elevate those. And I think about the work that you're doing with Hustle. Like, how many in that Hustle community could have historically have struggled and have been perceived as misfits, different, but that's their creative, unique genius that allows them to do what they do. And when they can find their people, they can find their group, they just grow that much further, faster together. So keep doing what you're doing, man.
And not 8 to 5.
Not 8 to 5. No.
Work when you want to.
Exactly right. Rob, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you for sharing time and space and your story and the work that you're doing with Hustle. I think it's a great chapter that you're writing here.
I appreciate that. My pleasure. Happy to be here anytime.
For someone who is watching or listening, they want to connect with Rob. What's the best way that they can connect with you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the good-looking guy with no hair.
I agree.
My email is rob.hoyle@vantagewest.org. I'd be happy to connect there and look forward to it.
Connect with Rob, learn with Rob, grow with Rob. Rob, thanks again for joining me for another episode of the Banking on Digital Growth podcast.
Thank you so much.
As always, and until next time, be well, do good, be the light.